القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين أما بعد سلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, tonight is going to be the first night of Dhul Hijjah, and today is the last day of Dhul Qa'dah. And today we are commemorating the wafat and the Shahadat of the ninth Imam, Al-Imam Al-Jawad alayhi afdalu salati was salam. Imam alayhi salam became an Imam at a very young age, at the age of 7 or 8. And he also passed away at a very young age, at the age of 25. And therefore you find that as a Shia community, we do not know a lot about Imam Al-Jawad. And our children also do not know a lot about the life of Imam Al-Jawad. And so this evening, I'd like to speak about certain important segments of the life of the Imam. Imam alayhi salam was born in the year 195 after Hijrah. And there's a difference of opinion about which month he was born in. According to one opinion, he was born in the month of Ramadan. And according to a second opinion, he was born in the month of Rajab. You find that in the Shia community, we celebrate the birth of the ninth Imam in the month of Rajab. And this is because we have a dua that we have received from the 12th Imam. And this dua comes to us from the third Na'ib, Hussein bin Rawh. And we're recommended to recite this dua in the entire month of Rajab. And the dua begins with Allahumma inni as'aluka bil mawludayn fi Rajab, Muhammad ibn Ali al-Thani wa ibnuhu Ali ibn Muhammad. Oh Allah, I ask you for the sake of the two births in the month of Rajab. One of our great Maraji of Taqlid, he says, imagine the status of the ninth Imam, that until the day of judgment, for as long as they are followers of the Ahlul Bayt, they will be reciting this dua in the month of Rajab. That, oh Allah, I ask you for the sake of the two who were born in the month of Rajab, Imam Al-Jawad and his son, Imam Al-Hadi. The birth of Imam Al-Jawad was a birth that was celebrated not only by the Shia community, but in particular you find that the 8th Holy Imam celebrated, marked the birth of the 9th Imam. In fact, he says in a hadith, which is a famous hadith about the 9th Imam, and you don't find this hadith about any other Imam. He says, هذا المولود الذي لم يولد مولود أعظم بركة على شيعتنا من. This birth, there is no birth that has greater blessing upon our Shia than the birth of the 9th Imam. So one of the questions that our scholars ask is, why is the birth of the 9th Imam such a great blessing for the Shia community? And what is so special about the 9th Imam that the 8th Imam is saying there is no blessing greater than him? So a number of reasons have been given. The first reason that has been given is that you will find that those who follow the 9th Imam, they follow all the way to the 12th Imam. As in before the 9th Imam, you had many other sects of Shiaism. Some stopped at the 4th Imam, like the Zaydi. They did not accept the 5th Imam. Some stopped at the 6th Imam, like the Ismaili. They did not accept the 7th Imam. Some stopped at the 7th Imam, like the Waqifiyya movement. We'll talk about them today. and they did not continue with the eighth Imam. But if somebody accepted the ninth Imam as the Imam, after him, everybody accepts all the way to the 12th Imam. Okay. But there are two other reasons given. One of the scholars from the Hijaz area, Shaykh Fawzi al-Yasin, he gives two very important reasons. The first reason he gives is says that you have to understand the political and social circumstances of that time. Something very important was happening, historically speaking, at that time. You find that when the seventh Imam passes away, there is a group of Shia that do not accept the Imam of the eighth Imam. This group is called the Waqifiyya movement. This used to be a sect of Shiaism. And they were of the belief that the seventh Imam has not passed away. And therefore there is no Imam after the seventh Imam. They didn't accept the Imamah of the eighth Imam. And this movement actually started from some of the representatives of the seventh Imam. They had a lot of khums money with them. So when the seventh Imam passed away, the eighth Imam said, this khums money should now be sent to me. They were not willing to do that. And so they say that the seventh Imam has not passed away. We don't have to accept the eighth Imam. Now, one of the arguments that they used against the eighth Imam, we have to remember that the eighth Imam was born in the year 148, I believe. Yeah. And the ninth Imam is born in the year 195. 195. So 47 years passed in the life of the eighth Imam, and he has no child. Yeah? The ninth Imam has no brothers or sisters. He is the only son of the eighth Imam. So when at the age of 47, Imam al-Rida alayhi salam has no child, the people from the Waqifiyya movement, they say an Imam should be perfect in all ways. He should be perfect in his knowledge. He should be perfect in his akhlaq. He should be perfect in his worship. And he should also be perfect in his physique and also in his social life. Which means he must have a child. He must have a son who is going to inherit him. And if the eighth Imam does not have a son who is going to inherit him, then he is not the Imam. So when the ninth Imam is born, then this establishes the Imamah of the eighth Imam, and it removes any doubt or any questions that they may raise about the Imam. So the Imam says, no birth has been more blessed than the birth of the ninth Imam. But then there's a third reason. And the third reason is also important. The third reason also requires us to understand that the Shia community was a growing community. And their understanding of Shiaism was also growing. And they were slowly beginning to accept, all of them, that an Imam is somebody who is appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? In fact, you find that there were Shias at that time that still used to believe that an Imam is a very knowledgeable scholar. He's a very knowledgeable scholar. He is better than all the other scholars, but he's not more than that. He's just a knowledgeable scholar. You know, we have a narration for the ninth Imam himself. He had an uncle, his grandfather's brother, Ali ibn Ja'far. Ali ibn Ja'far was a scholar. He was an elderly person. He was a respected person in the Banu Hashim. So Ali ibn Ja'far, when the ninth Imam one day entered into his presence, he stood up from his place. Without wearing his shoes, without putting on his abba, he ran to the ninth Imam, who was still a child, like his grandson. And he welcomed him, said salam to him. He told him, come and sit where I am sitting. He sat in front of him like a student would sit in front of the teacher. So after the ninth Imam leaves, the students of Ali ibn Ja'far, they turn to him and they say, what you did was not appropriate. He's like your grandson. You are like his grandfather. You have gray hair. He's not even reached perhaps a certain age of maturity as they would see it. How can you show so much respect to him? Even if he's an Imam. That was the thinking. And Ali ibn Ja'far gives a beautiful response. He says, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not see this gray hair to be worthy of imamah, and he saw this young child to be worthy of imamah, then who am I to question the wisdom and the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So at that time, there are still people who look at the Imam and they see the Imam as somebody who is a very knowledgeable scholar. So when Imam alayhi salam becomes an Imam, he becomes an Imam at a very young age. Imam al-Rida alayhi salam passed away in the year 202 or 203. So he becomes an Imam at the age of 7 or 8. In fact, if you remember in history, Imam al-Rida goes from Medina to Khurasan in the year 201 after Hijrah. It means that the ninth Imam is in his care for only 5 to 6 years. So when he becomes an Imam, he has to first establish his Imamah. And the Imam alayhi salam establishes his scholarly stature. He engages in debates. He engages in conversations. He answers the questions that people have to ask. In fact, they narrate. You have to put this into perspective. Imam was an Imam for 17 years, apparently. During that period of time, he was under house imprisonment. And yet they narrate the Imam had 110 students. Some of these students were from the Shia, some were from the Sunnah. Amongst his students were Ali ibn Mahziyar al-Ahwazi. Some of you have heard of Ali ibn Mahziyar. Ali ibn Mahziyar has written a number of books. He's not a small scholar. Al-Bazanti is also a famous scholar. He has written a number of books. He was a student of Imam al-Rida and Imam al-Jawad. Like that, there were many students of the Imam. Okay. So now when the Imam establishes his Imamah, then it becomes clear for the Shia community, everybody now in the Shia community, that the knowledge of the Imam is knowledge given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not knowledge which is just learned. It's not knowledge which is just acquired. His knowledge is divine knowledge. And therefore, not only he establishes his own Imamah, but now he's establishing the nature of the Imamah of all of the Imams. So the Imam says, no child has been born more blessed for the Shias than the ninth Imam. Now, in the narrations we are told that the ninth Imam was very dear to the eighth Imam. And the Imam shows a lot of care towards him at a very young age. There is this beautiful narration that some of our Maraji of Taqlid, I've also seen them narrate this. Okay? And we're told that when the eighth Imam went into the room of the ninth Imam, he was still a child in the cradle. كان طول ليلته يناغيه في مهده. He spent the whole night with him. And he was reciting certain things from him. So if you were at a distance, you would think the Imam is putting his son to sleep. Or maybe the Imam is reciting certain du'as for his son to put him to sleep. The narrator says, I not only saw this one night, I saw this night and night and night again. So then I came to Imam al-Rida and I said, Yabna Rasulillah, ju'iltu fidaka. There are many children who have been born to fathers before. Why do you spend the whole night reciting ta'weeth for him? Reciting dua for him? Trying to put him to sleep? Inshallah, he'll be okay. You don't have to recite so much dua for him. Okay? So now the Imam responds. And he says to him, فَقَالَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ وَيْحَكَ ليس هذا عوذة إنما أغره بالعلم غرا. I'm not reciting dua or ta'weed for him. I am transferring my knowledge to him. I am transferring my knowledge to him whilst he is a child in the cradle. Okay? It's a very profound statement over here. It's a profound statement because it teaches us that knowledge is not transferred from mind to mind. Knowledge is not something which is stored in the mind. Knowledge is not something which is acquired in the mind. Knowledge is something which is stored in the soul. A real transfer of knowledge is when knowledge is transferred from soul to soul. That even sometimes when the mind or the brain has not developed, the soul has developed, the knowledge can still go from one soul to another soul. Knowledge is in the ruh. Knowledge is not in the brain. The ruh can acquire more than the brain can acquire. The ruh can overcome the limitations of the brain. We have an example of this in the Quran. When Lady Maryam alayha salam points to Prophet Isa, قالوا كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا. How can we speak to one who is still a baby in the cradle? قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا. He said, I am the servant of God. He has given me the book. It's not in the future tense. It is in the past tense. In the cradle, I have already received the book. I have already learned it. My soul has acquired it. And therefore, it is our belief that prophets are born prophets. And imams are also born as imams. And it's our belief that the soul can learn what the brain sometimes cannot learn. Sometimes we look at our limitations and we see the limitations of our brains. We see sometimes that we don't have enough memory. We don't have enough attention. We're not able to analyze things. We're not able to understand things. What this is teaching us is even when the brain is not able to understand, the soul is able to understand. We should never give up hope on acquiring knowledge. We should never give up hope on acquiring ma'rifah. What the soul is able to acquire is much more than what just the brain is able to acquire. Now today I want to draw attention to two of the qualities in the life of Imam al-Jawad. And both of these qualities are seen in him at a very young age. In fact, when you study the life of Imam al-Jawad, you find that most of what we know about him is when he is at a young age. Later on, he is under house imprisonment. But the first quality of Imam al-Jawad was his generosity. And he was known for his generosity. Even the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salam, have confessed to his generosity. One of them that might really surprise you is Ibn Taymiyyah. You know, Allama al-Hilli wrote Minhaj al-Karama. I mentioned this to you earlier. In Minhaj al-Karama, he speaks about the Imams and the proof for why they are Imams. One of the narrations that he narrates in that book is the narration of the debate or the conversation between Imam al-Jawad and Yahya ibn Aktham, if you remember, where he asks him, what is the penalty of the one who kills an animal in the state of ihram? I won't go through the details of it tonight. So in Minhaj al-Sunnah, which is a response to Minhaj al-Karama, one of the things that Ibn Taymiyyah tries to do is he tries to question this narration. It's a very important narration. It's important because it is demonstrating not that the Imam had knowledge. It is demonstrating that the knowledge of the Imam comes to him from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he has to question it. But before he questions it, he writes in his book, Ibn Taymiyyah, Muhammad ibn Ali al-Jawad kana min a'yan Bani Hashim. He was one of the outstanding figures of the Banu Hashim. وَهُوَ مَعْرُوفٌ بِالسَّخَاءِ. And he was famous for his generosity. So famous for his generosity, وَلِهَذَا سُمِّيَ بِالْجَوَادِ. It is for this reason he was known as Al-Jawad. And there's a beautiful narration about Imam Al-Jawad as a young man. You know that by the year 201 after Hijrah, Imam Al-Rida has now gone to Khurasan, and Imam Al-Jawad does not travel with him. Imam Al-Jawad remains in Medina. So now it seems that Imam Al-Rida used to write letters to Imam Al-Jawad. So now this is one of the letters. He says in this letter, Imam, after sending salams to his son, he says to him, Ya Aba Ja'far. Now I'm going to read the letter for you because it's the letter of Imam Al-Rida. بلغني أن الموالي إذا ركبت أخرجوك من الباب الصغير. News has reached me that when the servants want you to go out of the house and to go on the horse, they make you leave from the back door and not from the front door, from the small door and not from the main door. فإنما ذلك من بخل بهم لئلا ينال منك أحد خيرا. And the reason they do this is because of their own miserliness. They don't want anybody to benefit from your goodness. You see what used to happen is at the main door of the house of the Imam, the beggars used to gather. And they knew Imam Al-Jawad to be Jawad. So they would gather there, and when the Imam would leave, whatever money he had, he would keep distributing until he gave it away. So when the servants of the 9th Imam and the 8th Imam see that, they're trying to protect him. So instead of allowing him to leave from the main door of the house, they make him leave from the where? From the back door. So Imam alayhi salam, he says, فَأَسْأَلُكَ بِحَقِّ عَلَيْكَ. I'm asking you, my son, for the sake of my right upon you. I'm asking you as a father to do this. لَا يَكُنْ مَدْخَلَكَ وَمَخْرَجَكَ إِلَّا مِنَ الْبَابِ الْكَبِيرِ. Don't leave the house, don't enter the house unless you're entering from the main door and you're leaving from the main door. Let people see you. Let the beggars come to you. Let them come and ask from you. There's no problem with that. Okay? وَإِذَا رَكَبْتَ فَلْيَكُنْ مِنْكَ ذَهَبٌ وَفِضَّةٌ. And when you leave the house, don't leave empty-handed. Don't leave with small coins. Leave with gold and silver. Whatever you have, leave with that. ثُمَّ لَا يَسْأَلَكَ أَحَدٌ إِلَّا أَعْطَيْتَ. And then nobody should ask you except that you give to him. Now, there is adab in Islam. When people ask you how many people you should give to, how many you have to give to. I know sometimes we go for ziyarah, and many people ask us along the way. We say, should we give to all of them? How much should we give to all of them? So there are adab in Islam. For example, the first 3 people that you see, you should give to them, and after that, you are in freedom to do what you want. And then the Imam says, وَمَنْ سَأَلَكَ مِنْ عُمُومَتِكَ أَنْ تَبَرُّهُ فَلَا تُعْطِهِ أَقَلَّ مِنْ 50 دِينَارًا. If your uncles, for example, they ask you to give them something. Now look at how careful the Imam is. He says, everybody has a right over you, but members of your family, they have a greater right over you. If they were to ask you for something, then make sure you don't give them less than 50 dinar. And if you wish to give more, then you're free to do that. If your aunts ask from you, make sure you don't give less than 25 dinars. And if they ask, if you wish to give more than that, then give more than that. And then the Imam says, Inni, why am I asking you to give? Why am I asking you to share your wealth? Why am I asking you to be generous the way you are generous? Inni uridu an yarfa'aka Allah. فَانْفِقْ وَلَا تَخْشَ مِنْ ذِي الْعَرْشِ إِقْتَارًا. I want Allah to raise you. So give in the way of God and do not fear poverty. Now I want to make a few notes about this particular narration. The first note I want to make is that look at how much awareness the Imam has about his son. Yeah? Where is he? He is in Khurasan. Where is Imam Al-Jawad? Imam al-Jawad is where in? Medina. Not only the Imam is receiving news about Imam al-Jawad, Imam alayhi salam knows what is happening in the house. Imam alayhi salam knows who are the people around Imam al-Rida. Imam alayhi salam knows what is the culture of the people who are around Imam al-Rida. Imam al-Jawad. Imam alayhi salam knows what they are teaching him and what they are trying to prevent from him. As parents, I ask you, how many of us know what our children are doing? What our children are watching? Who our children are following? Who are they following on their Instagram and their Twitter? What are they watching on Netflix and on YouTube? What are they listening to when they have earphones in their ears? Imam is thousands of kilometers away or hundreds of kilometers away. He knows what is happening in his house. Sometimes our children are in the other room and we don't know what's happening in the house. We have to be aware of what's happening in the house. It doesn't mean we have to go and spy into them. It means we have to be attentive. We have to talk to our children. We have to listen to our children. We have to notice our children. We have to notice their conversation. We need to be aware of what's happening in their life. Who are the influences in their life? The second thing that we also notice about this particular narration is Imam al-Jawad is also aware of the culture that is around Imam. Imam al-Rida is aware of the culture that's around Imam al-Jawad. He's not just worried about the behavior. He's more worried about the culture, the mindset, the thinking. He says to him that don't fear giving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many of us are aware of the culture in our society? Or the culture in our schools? Or the values online? Let me give you an example of where the culture has taken us. Now, we live in a society where the culture is the culture of receiving more than it is the culture of what? Of giving. From the time a child is young and they're growing up, they are accustomed to a culture of what? Getting, more than they are accustomed to a culture of giving and sacrificing. So birthday come, they receive. Graduations come and they receive. Nowadays, it's not only graduating at university, at high school, at middle school, at elementary school, at kindergarten, at junior kindergarten. I think one day we'll reach a point every grade will be graduating. So they receive and give an importance. Yeah? And a lot of sort of self-centeredness sometimes is being built into our children. The idea that I'm important, I should receive, a sense of entitlement is being built in there. It's almost that I deserve to be given things. And there's no wrong with giving gifts to our children, of course. We're actually recommended on Fridays, you should give a gift to your children. But it's that culture where there's receiving and there's no giving. So what's the result of that? So one of the results of that, one of the previous governor generals in Canada, they did a report. This report is done by the Rideau Hall Foundation. And they looked at the culture of giving between 1984 all the way to 2018, okay? And how the culture of giving has changed in Canada. And they wanted to see if people are becoming more generous or people are becoming what? Less generous. Okay? And they found that over 30 years, the culture of giving is diminishing in Canada. The culture of generosity is diminishing in Canada. In fact, one of the very interesting results of that survey or study is that today, at this time, donors who are aged over 50 account for 74% of the donations in Canada. Over the age of 50 account for what? 74% of the donations in Canada. And the people who actually give anything, has gone down by 30%. We have to encourage the culture of giving. And that means that we also have to be aware of the culture that's in our society. A culture of individualism is not conducive to giving. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. The second narration and quality of the Imam was his detachment from the dunya and the taqwa he had of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, this narration is about the life of the Imam when he was at a young age. Okay? So when Imam alayhi salam, he comes to Baghdad, Imam was young at that time. The ruler at that time, Ma'mun, decided to see if he could tempt the Imam and tempt him with the dunya. Okay? So in one of the narrations we are told that he sent some ladies towards the Imam to see if they could attract the Imam. The Imam showed no interest. Then we come to this narration. In this narration, it is said that Ma'mun found a person who was a singer and a musician. And he said to him, if you can try to attract Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, then I will give you a good gift. So we're told that this man not only was a singer, but he was good with musical instruments. And one of his, I guess, facial features was he had a very long beard. Okay? He had a very long beard. فدعاه المأمون فقال, the man said, إن كان في شيء من أمر الدنيا فأنا أكفيك أمره. If he has any love or interest for the world in his heart, I will be sufficient for him. I'll be able to attract him towards the dunya. Okay? فقعد بين يدي أبي جعفر. So he sat in front of the ninth Imam. And he made a call and everybody gathered around him. When everybody gathered around him, the man وَجَعَلَ يَضْرِبُ بِعَوْدِهِ وَيُغَنِّي. He started to beat his musical instruments and he started to sing with the most beautiful voice that he had. فَلَمَّا فَعَلَ سَاعَةً وَإِذَا أَبُو جَعْفَرْ لَا يَلْتَفِتْ يَمِينًا وَلَا شِمَالًا. So for a period of time, he was singing, looking for a reaction from Imam al-Jawad. You know, sometimes a person, if they go to the mall and the music is loud, after a while, you see that they're walking differently. Yes? You see that they're talking differently. You see that their head is moving differently. They are affected, they are influenced by it. He says, for a while I saw neither his head turn to the right nor his head turn to the left. ثم رفع رأسه إليه وقال اتق الله يا ذا العثنون. He then raised his hand and looked straight at the man and said, fear Allah, O the one with the beard. The way the Imam looked at him, the way the Imam talked to him, the man, his musical instruments, they fell from his hand. And they say until the end of his life, this man was not able to play with musical instruments. Now, the reason why I brought this narration is because one of the things I am noticing in the Muslim community and the children of the Muslim community is the rise of culture of listening to music and listening to songs. Okay? In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if today we were to do a survey of children who are in high school and elementary school and how many of them listen to popular music, that within the Shia community itself, that number would be close to 80% or to even 90% without exaggeration. In fact, I remember this is 10 years ago. I was trying to do a survey on what are the most important videos on YouTube. There was a discussion that came up. So I went on Google and I Googled the most viewed, not important, but the most viewed videos on Google, on YouTube, sorry. So it turns out that 10 of the top viewed videos on YouTube are all what? Billions of views, are all music videos. So I wrote it down, and I was talking to a group of youth. This was 10 years ago. And I said, for example, top on the list is, and then I had to read it out. And I read it out, and from the crowd, they were telling me who the musician was. I would read the second one, and they knew who the musician was, who the singer was, which lady did it. I was surprised because today, if I were to ask in the Shia or the Muslim community, Misbahul Sharia, who has written it, we don't know. If I gave another name, for example, of a book, I said, for example, Kitabul Irshad, who has written this book? Maybe a lot of people don't know. But when I read out the name of the song, they know who has done it. So this is concerning. Because you see on one hand, Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam turns to this man and says, Ittaqillah, fear Allah. And on the other hand, we're seeing this rise. So one of the questions that arises commonly is, why is it haram? If the lyrics are good lyrics, why is it haram? If we're listening to it once in a while without getting addicted to it, then why is it haram? Sahih. And you find that the culture of music has changed from the past until now. It's something we have to understand. In the past, for example, if somebody wanted to listen to music and singing, they have to go to a particular gathering. That gathering has a particular culture. A certain people come there. Certain actions happen in that gathering. There are certain people who sing and do music. Now, nowadays, a young person, they ask that, I don't go to these gatherings. I don't associate with these people. In fact, I just listen to it when I'm doing my work. I listen to it when I'm doing my homework. I listen to it when I go for a walk. I listen to music when I, for example, am doing something productive. It helps me to be more productive in life. Then why is music haram? Well, that's a discussion of its own, and time is coming to an end. But you find that there are a number of reasons that have been mentioned by our scholars and mentioned in ahadith. We have to look at the lyrics, we have to look at the rhythm, we have to look at the impact of the rhythm upon the soul. We have to look at who the singers are, we have to look at what the culture is, we look at what is associated around it. Nowadays, music videos don't come out by themselves. The whole video that comes out, there's a culture associated to it. But one thing that the Quran points out is the Quran talks about lahaw. Music is an example of lahaw. Lahaw is something which is vain, something which distracts us, something that takes us away from our ultimate purpose of life. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْتَرِي لَهْوَ الْحَدِيثِ لِيُضِلَّ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, to distract us from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Music has that ability. It has the ability to make life vain, to take away the purposefulness of life, to take away the seriousness of life. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen a person who listens to a lot of music and that person is a serious seeker of knowledge? A person who listens to a lot of music and that person is a serious worshipper, abid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person who listens to music and that person lives a life of struggle, a life of sacrifice, a life of jihad in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? It's because music has this ability to take away from the seriousness of life, to distract us from our ultimate purpose and goal in life. Right? There's a whole particular way of life in which music fits. And for the one who is making his journey towards God, music does not fit into that lifestyle. It is a distraction from that lifestyle. Right? So Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, he tells him, Ittaqillah, fear Allah. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Let us take our hearts to Baghdad, to Kadhimain, to Kadhimiyya. And let us remember Imam al-Jawad. Imam alayhi salam passed away at a very young age. when the ruler saw, Mu'tasim saw, the people are gathering around the Imam in Medina, he summoned him to Baghdad and he imprisoned him in his own home in Baghdad. When they saw that people were still gathering around Imam al-Jawad, Imam was rising in popularity. There were some people who came to him and said to him that if you allow him to live, this young man of 25 years, if you allow him to live, then people are going to turn to him more than they are going to turn to you. Then people are going to join him in a rebellion against you. So he decided to poison the Imam. According to some of the narrations, he gave the poison to the wife of the Imam, al-Fadl. And al-Fadl puts the poison into the grapes. And she comes and presents it to the Imam on the last day of Dhul Qa'dah. Imam alayhi salam, the moment he consumes the grapes, he feels the effects of the poison in his body. He feels the effects of the poison in himself. And he turns to her and immediately she realizes the mistake that she has made. And the Imam makes a dua and the dua is answered. And al-Fadl, when she passes away later on, she passes away from the most difficult ways. But that night the Imam suffered from the effects of the poison. Imam alayhi salam could feel the effects of the poison in his body. That night he turned from one side to another side. According to some narrations, they say the Imam was so thirsty he asked for some water. According to some of the narrations, they say that they did not allow water to come to the Imam. They closed all of the doors and they left the Imam alone inside the room, alone inside the house. The next day, Imam alayhi salam, he passes away. And the people gather to try and wash and bury the body of the Imam. But the ruler, he takes the body of the Imam. He doesn't want to release the body of the Imam. After a while, the people come. They gather around the Imam. They take his body. Imam al-Hadi comes. He washes the body of his father. He shrouds the body of his father. He prays over the body of Imam al-Jawad. And they bury him next to Imam al-Kadhim in Kadhimiyya. I will say, Ya ibn Rasulillah, even though they kept your body, but then they washed your body, they shrouded your body, and they buried you next to your grandfather. But alas, on the plains of Karbala, they left the body of Aba Abdillah. On the plains of Karbala, the women and children, they passed by the body of Imam al-Hussein. They saw his body without the head lying in Karbala. Nobody wishing to bury him until 3 to 4 days later when Imam al-Sajjad comes to body him. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا آلَ مُحَمَّدٍ أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ العلي العظيم ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم واغفر لنا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Hussein, Ya Hussein,
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی مظلوم کی دنیا میں مظلوم کی دنیا میں طرفداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی شبیر کا مقصد جو سمجھ لیتا زمانہ شبیر کا مقصد جو سمجھ لیتا زمانہ قرآن کو سمجھنے میں قرآن کو سمجھنے میں یہ دشواری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی دو روز بھی جنت میں رہنا ہمیں مشکل تھا دو روز بھی جنت میں رہنا ہمیں مشکل تھا زہرا تیرے بچوں کی زہرا تیرے بچوں کی جو سرداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی غازی تیرے جیسا جو علمدار نہ ہوتا غازی تیرے جیسا جو علمدار نہ ہوتا دنیا میں علم ہوتے دنیا میں علم ہوتے علمداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی شرمندہ سکینہ سے اگر ہوتا نہ پانی شرمندہ سکینہ سے اگر ہوتا نہ پانی یہ رسم سبیلوں کی یہ رسم سبیلوں کی کبھی جاری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی ناموں سے محمد کو جو پہچانتی دنیا ناموں سے محمد کو جو پہچانتی دنیا زینب کے کھلے سر پر زینب کے کھلے سر پر یہ سنگباری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی مظلوم کی دنیا میں مظلوم کی دنیا میں طرفداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی شبیر اگر تیری عزاداری نہ ہوتی یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین